Welcome to Sunday service this October 10th at the UU Society of Burlington, Vermont. I'm Judy Brook, a member of the Worship Associate team. We are a liberal religious community, guided not by a creed, but by shared values, including love, compassion, justice, service, and truth. We believe strongly in individual freedom of belief, and we encourage our members to pursue their own spiritual journeys, to develop a set of beliefs that's meaningful to them. We are an inclusive congregation, welcoming all people of whatever age, class, ethnicity, gender, ability, or sexual orientation into our beloved community. We know that those of you joining us might be longtime members or relatively newcomers from the area or from distant states and countries, visitors and the just curious. We're so glad you're here with us today. We acknowledge that we reside on the traditional and unceded home of the Western Abenaki people. This land in the Lake Champlain watershed has been a site of meeting and exchange for Indigenous people for many generations. The first Unitarian Universalist society honors and recognizes and respects the Abenaki as the traditional stewards of this land. We strive to respect and protect it while continually honoring the legacy of Vermont's Indigenous people. We have been sequestered for over 19 months in this time of COVID-19 pandemic. Our meeting house in the heart of Burlington remains closed to gatherings, but we are a very active congregation. Please visit our website at uusociety.org to discover activities, circles, discussions, classes for adults and children, or watch the screen at the end of the service for a list of events. Our Ministerial intern, Rowan van Ness, is leading this service. A recent graduate of Harvard Divinity School and candidate for Unitarian Universalist ministry, Rowan joined us in August and will be with us for the year. Today, Rowan's parents are visiting from out of state and joining us here in the sanctuary, along with her partner, Caitlin. We also offer a warm welcome to the UU Society Internship Committee supporting her work this year. They are joining us both in person and online. Grateful thanks to all who made this service possible, in front of cameras and behind the scenes. Special thanks to Rowan, Sam Whitesell, pianist, our tech team, Woody Fulton and James Stewart, and Susan Raimy, who graced us with flowers. No matter who you are, where you come from, what you believe, you are welcome here. Come, let us worship together. We kindle this chalice flame to remind ourselves of the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment.
In the words of our President Joseph Biden, on Indigenous Peoples Day, our nation celebrates the invaluable contributions and resilience of Indigenous peoples, recognizes their inherent sovereignty, and commits to honoring the federal government's trust and treaty obligations to tribal nations. Since before the beginning of the United States, Indigenous people have lived with the stress of colonization, broken promises, and mangled treaties. We celebrate their survival amidst the hardship. Today, we are about 19 months into when this pandemic started for many of us. I say this knowing that each of our own stories may start in different moments. Today, we welcome stories, poetry, and life experiences in finding a way through uncertainty. Come, let us worship together.
Our separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this hour. Our trials in this life appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind, seeds for the soul we are laid in store, nurtured in love and conscience refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the Spirit growing in all, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun. Winter to spring and summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength. Gather to celebrate once again.
Let us take this time to deepen together into a time of meditation. We will begin our meditation by sharing the joys and sorrows of our community. Then we'll hold a brief time of silence. Let us take a deep breath together, breathing in the breath of life, breathing out the breath of peace, and come into a place of holy listening. Let us hear these words of joy and sorrow for this day, Sunday, October 10th, 2012. Joy for the fall foliage color extravaganza. Gratitude for patience and perseverance. We have done our very best for 19 months to act responsibly, keeping ourselves, our loved ones, and our greater community safe. May the joys and sorrows of each be the joys and sorrows of all, reminding us of our shared humanity. As we enter the silence, let's hold that which has been spoken and that which remains unspoken tenderly in our hearts.
I'm going to lead you in a guided meditation, beginning with a poem. First, take a moment to get comfortable in your seat. Feel the strength of the chair, the bench, the couch, wherever you're sitting, supporting you. The Patience of Ordinary Things by Pat Schneider. It is a kind of love, is it not? How the cup holds the tea, how the chair stands sturdy and foursquare, how the floor receives the bottoms of shoes or toes, how soles of feet know where they're supposed to be. I've been thinking about the patience of ordinary things, how clothes wait respectfully in closets, and soap dries quietly in the dish, and towels drink the wet from the skin of the back, and the lovely repetition of stairs. And what is more generous than a window? Take a moment to check in with yourself. How are you feeling in your body right now? With a gentle gaze, take a look around the space you are in, beginning with the objects closest to you, maybe within 5 feet or so of you. What do you notice? What thoughts or feelings arise in connection with these objects? Whatever they are, let them be. Take another look around your space, perhaps a little further away. What else do you notice? Again, what thoughts or feelings arise in connection with these objects? And again, let them be. Returning to yourself for a moment, see how you're feeling once again. Perhaps something has shifted, and perhaps not. Let it be. Now let us take a few moments for individual prayer and reflection during a brief moment of silence, followed by a musical meditation.
My paddle's clean and bright, flashing like silver, swift as the wild goose flies. Dip, dip, and swing. Dip, dip, and swing it back, flashing like silver, swift as the wild goose flies. Dip, dip, and swing. When I was 16 and living in Minnesota, that's that orange state way in the central north, I took my canoe paddle and headed into the Superior Quetico, now known as the boundary waters between Minnesota and Canada. That red area is where I was playing. This is an area of ancient bedrock, primeval forest, moose marshes, and in places, lakes linked by portages a few feet to many miles long. The white line on the map is the border between the US and Canada. There's nothing up there, no white line, no houses, no roads, lots of space. I was part of a Girls Mariner Scout troop of 10 high school sophomores, plus 2 leaders who were a couple years older than we were. 60 years ago, we had no quick-drying fabrics, nylon tents, or gourmet freeze-dried meals. We had 4 Grumman aluminum canoes, canvas tents, canvas backpacks carrying canned and dried foods, and our cookware, and a waterproof map. We would be gone 14 days. Oh, this was long before cell phones. We were completely out of touch. Look at that map again. No civilization, no help. We'd be all on our own. We couldn't wait. 14 days of paddling lakes so pristine, we could just dip our cup into the water and drink. 14 days accompanied by loons yodeling at night as the northern lights flashed overhead. 14 days of isolation, yet community. 14 days of adventure. We looked forward to a campsite at the end of a long lake, but were challenged by wicked headwinds and lashing rain for 10 miles. We were prepared with waterproof matches, but had trouble finding dry wood. We had a waterproof map, but in the 2 years since its publication, some portages had disappeared, swallowed by the undergrowth. We were lost. We had a teammate with pain in her abdomen. Appendicitis? Do we paddle back days or go ahead to try to find help? These unexpected testing experiences. No Google Maps, no cell phones. Oh, the uncertainty. We did make it because we were prepared. All of us were junior or senior lifesavers and all had Red Cross certified small craft safety badges. We made it because we relied on each other's strength and counsel. We made it because we were patient. Where did this patience come from? Some of it came from the land itself. Slow-growing lichen covering massive sheets of glacial scraped bedrock. Came from pines and hemlocks that had been standing sentinel for eons. We took in these lessons of patience. The patience also came from ourselves. We could only move at the speed of our paddles, and we learned to be patient and conserve that energy. One paddle dip at a time, patient, one lake at a time, patient, one portage at a time, patient one day at a time. We learn to savor each moment in spite of uncertainty, maybe because of uncertainty. We made it. Oh, the thrill of survival. I did it again the next year. Our Vermont community has faced unexpected testing experiences before. Remember the ice storm of January 1998, when trees and power lines crashed for 4 days under 5 inches of ice? People lost power for weeks in dangerously cold weather. There were few trees left standing between here and Montreal. It was 2 years rather, before Mount Philo could open. It looked like pickup sticks. Patience. Then there was Hurricane Irene, August 2011, that devastated the lower part of Vermont, cut power to 1/3 of the state. We gathered supplies and sent truckloads down to our neighbors. It's taken years to recover bridges and roads and homes. Patience. And now the COVID pandemic. We're 19 months in, and who knows how many more months or years ahead. Patience. We can do this. We've been doing it, and we've done it before, one day at a time. So give it your best shot, pun intended, and be patient.
Offerings this month will be shared with the Clemens Family Farm, an African-American-owned farm and community arts center in Charlotte, Vermont. Over the last hundreds of years, just 100, over the last 100 years, African Americans have lost nearly 93% of their land assets in this country, from about 44 million acres in the 1920s to about 3.5 million acres today. Your support will help keep the Clemens farmland available for Black farmers and artists, the wider community, and visitors. Preserving this special place to address community needs, build a loving multicultural community, and create a special sense of place. With gratitude, we dedicate these gifts in the service of our mission to inspire spiritual growth, care for each other and our community, seek truth, and act for justice. I'm going to begin again with a poem. Try to Love the Questions Themselves by Rainier Maria Rilke. Have patience with everything unresolved in your heart and try to love the questions themselves, as if they were locked rooms or books written in a very foreign language. Don't search for the answers which could not be given to you now, because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps then, someday far in the future, you will gradually, without even noticing it, live your way into the answer. That translation is from Stephen Mitchell. I don't know about you, but here are some of the questions that are on my mind these days. When is this pandemic going to end? Is it going to ever end, or will it just shift into something less urgent? When or how will we even know? When can I see people in person again without the anxiety that they may make me sick or that I may make them sick? The COVID numbers locally lately have me feeling a little bit more optimistic. Maybe they're going in the right direction. But I've also felt this way during the pandemic before. This is not the first time it seemed like things were getting better. Will things actually get better this time? Or will another variant pop up and take us back a few steps, or something else? The first poem that I shared during the meditation, The Patience of Ordinary Things, was one I actually encountered early in the pandemic. When I think back to March 2020, in those early weeks, some parts of my life just seemed to slow down, even if there were other parts that were intensifying. I mused about whether the clothes that I wasn't wearing were waiting respectfully in the closet. I found the poem to be a fun, even playful interpretation of everyday inanimate objects, a kind of love, a kind of patience. Pat Schneider, that poet, also brings a form of attention to everyday objects. Considering how the soap dries quietly in the dish is a kind of attentiveness. I was working as a chaplain in a long-term care hospital that primarily served Jewish elders early in that pandemic. Every day after work, I got out of my car and sat on trash bags that I'd put over the seats in my car, carefully making sure that any COVID germs that I may have picked up, that may have gotten on my clothes, wouldn't stick to the seat in the car, and that the seats could be carefully wiped down with disinfectant. A few weeks later, COVID spread through the hospital, and with the limited PPE, an acronym I had never even heard before the pandemic, personal protection equipment, and a classmate was sick and quarantined at home with COVID, it was decided that chaplaincy students should complete our last few weeks of work remotely. There was so much we didn't know then, and there is still so much that we don't know. As I continued my chaplaincy training, we talked about our patients and our own needs during disasters. We studied the impact of disasters on people's spiritual and emotional well-being. Here's one concept that really stuck with me. There are 3 universal triggers for stress: a lack of knowledge, a lack of certainty, and a lack of control. This was especially true for us early in the pandemic. This was a novel coronavirus, spreading in ways that weren't entirely clear to us, and with a great speed that made the need for understanding feel more urgent than ever. At this point, we know a lot more about COVID than we did before, but we still see a lack of certainty and a lack of control coming up all over the place. Here at the UU Society, As you may have read in Reverend Tricia's article in the most recent issue of The Steeple, our society's newsletter, the staff are actively engaging in discussions about when and how we can gather in person, especially considering the variable levels of risk, as not everyone is able to get vaccinated yet, especially the children. Every organization and institution that is making these decisions is coming to its own conclusions, which often means that we arrive at the door of a place not knowing what to expect. And even if there is a policy and it's clearly, please wear a mask or something like that on the door, who enforces it? Many of us have experienced the stress of trying to create these policies and the stress of trying to make the individual decisions of what feels safe enough to do. Lack of knowledge, lack of certainty, lack of control. So much of this is out of our control. We can blame our institutions, our local government, our national government for the decisions made in the past or in the present that don't keep us safe. Indeed, theologians are looking at the ways that moral injury is showing up during the pandemic. It is out of our control who is vaccinated yet or not. It is easy to blame others. If they just got vaccinated, so many fewer people would be getting sick and dying. I recently heard someone in public health say that people tend to overestimate the risks of getting the vaccine and underestimate the risks of getting COVID. That seemed like a very compassionate interpretation to me. I think anger at people not getting vaccinated is an expression of our frustration about not having control in this situation. Similarly, choosing not to get vaccinated is a way for other people to exercise control in a situation we don't have much control. Opposite responses may be coming from the same motivation. Even in writing this sermon, I can see my own desire to have and offer some semblance of control coming up. I want to be able to encourage you all. Be patient, just live these particular ways, and it will be easier. And I can keep on going on and offering suggestions, religious wisdom from the world's traditions on how to live with uncertainty and a lack of control. But I'm reminded of Rilke's words here. Have patience with everything unresolved in your heart and try to love the questions themselves. Try to love the questions themselves. What does that even mean? Rilke suggests to have patience with everything unresolved in your heart and try to love the questions themselves as if they were locked rooms or books written in a very foreign language. He suggests that even without knowing what is contained in the rooms or in those books, we can still find joy in their existence. Our capacity for joy isn't based on certainty or knowledge. The pandemic is not a benign force in the world like I'd like to imagine that those books in foreign languages are. But when I think back to the early days of the pandemic, I know that many people found some secret delight in canceled plans or the news that the air quality had improved in parts of the world that had ground to a halt. Similarly, I heard the other day on the radio about little kids playing soccer and laughing in a refugee camp after escaping from Afghanistan. Even in the presence of heightened stress, joy can be possible. Learning to love the questions could be an aspect of learning to live. Moments come up in our lives again and again in which we lack knowledge, certainty, and/or control. I wonder, have any of you ever had the experience of feeling like a tiny part of something much greater than yourself? A handful of moments come to mind for me. A moment on the way to a crew regatta when the sunrise was just brilliant. My anxiety about the upcoming race had subsided, and I recognized that I was just one of thousands of people who have rowed boats in races throughout history. And in fact, I was just one of billions of people alive at that moment. I took comfort in the relative insignificance of that morning's race, that regardless of the outcome, I would be okay, my team would be okay, and the world would be okay, and my anxiety subsided. Other moments for me have been playing in an orchestra or a wind ensemble and feeling surrounded by that music. Standing in the woods when the light has come through the dappled trees in just a brilliant way, and the sweet smell of summer and berries and cedar trees has wafted through the air. Those moments of feeling connected to something greater than myself perhaps have given me a greater capacity to live with uncertainty, to live with the questions, and maybe even to love them. When Judy and I were talking in preparation for this worship service, we also talked about the ways that previous experiences with a lack of certainty and control, these testing experiences she described earlier, have strengthened our capacity to live the questions. If this is the case, perhaps it gets easier to live the questions with age, either because we have more lived experience or because we realize how little control we actually have. Natural disasters can bring this into light. So can a serious injury or an illness. In my work with older adults, some of them hold an acceptance that life is just hard and you have to look for gratitude for what you can. Similarly, I imagine that some people who have lived with disabilities or serious illness might experience or approach living with a lack of knowledge, certainty, or control in a different way. I don't fully know what these two poems mean, but they have been bringing me comfort in the context of an ongoing pandemic. My joy over these past 19 months has often been in small things. Eating fresh bread from my favorite bakery, connecting with dear friends on the telephone, watching the changing colors of the leaves day by day, and finding a poem that rings true. There will continue to be uncertainty ahead of us. We're all doing the best we can at this point, having lived in stressful conditions for so long. So we need to find the ways to live with the uncertainty as gracefully as is possible. Live the questions. Love the questions. May it be so.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and share with the world until we are together again. In the words of the Reverend Wayne Arneson, take courage, friends. The way is often hard. The path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. Many blessings upon all of you. Go and enjoy this beautiful, crisp autumn day. Go in peace.